Hello and welcome to another video coverage of This Week in Rails. I'm Dave Kimura, and today we have Wojtek bringing us the updates. If you'd like to receive your own email copy of this newsletter, you can go to rubyonrails.org/newsletter. I don't produce the newsletter, I simply provide this video coverage of it. So let's go ahead and dive right in. For the first item, the Rails Foundation has a new contributing member, and that is AppSignal, so congratulations to them. Next, this one that I'm really excited about, and it's called Trilogy, and it's basically a drop-in replacement for the MySQL 2 gem. So if you do have any applications that are running MySQL 2, and if you were interested in looking at some alternatives, then definitely check out Trilogy. It is created by GitHub, and so if you do have any issues with the current MySQL 2 gem, then definitely check this one out. And for the next item, improved password length validation for BCrypt compatibility. And this is a very interesting pull request. The actual code itself means that in the upper limit of the BCrypt password length, it can only accept 72 bytes. And so this is adding some appropriate validation around that. But the interesting bit is that this was all created by ChatGPT with some guidance. And so ultimately, ChatGPT, if you haven't heard, is an AI program. It is a large language model which allows you to give it a prompt and it'll give you a response. But what sets it apart from a lot of other ones is that you can actually have a conversation with it. Up to like 2,000 or 4,000 characters back, it's going to be able to take that into context in how it responds. So in a lot of situations, you're able to have a conversation with it, and that also includes writing some code. And you want to be very careful when using ChatGPT for a few reasons. One, you want to make sure that you're never putting any kind of personal identifiable information in there. There has been recent news where other people were able to actually access the history of others. And another major concern that I have with these large language models is that they are very confident. They are extremely confident in how they reply to things, and that's not a good thing because a lot of times, especially with the code that it's producing, it's incorrect, or it's suggesting that you use a very outdated package that hasn't been updated in many years. So you want to use a lot of caution, and anything that it spits out, if you are going to use it for code, you want to make sure that you are validating and making sure that all of that code is actually what you're intending to happen. Because otherwise you can get yourself into some very bad situations, and ultimately you are responsible for the code that is getting put into the application you're developing. It is a very confident, overly confident junior developer. So imagine if there is a junior developer who has read every book and they're able to talk about all of these different kinds of topics, but it really doesn't know how to interconnect things well or some of the best practices, or it's just relying on some very outdated information. So that overconfidence that it has can lead us to believe that what it's saying is true, and that could be a very dangerous stance. So definitely make sure that you're critiquing anything and everything that you're getting back from ChatGPT or any other kind of large language model. And for the next item, add ActiveSupport MessagePack. And this is an interesting one because it's a different serializer that you would normally find with something like JSON or a Marshall dump and a Marshall load. And the claims of this is a performance improvement and message size reduction. So it seems like an overall win, but you do want to be very careful when using MessagePack, because as you use it as a serializer, when it gets deserialized, you may not get this same object. So before you go out and use it, you want to make sure that the objects that you're trying to pass into it can be serialized and deserialized with the expected results. And if you're finding that it's not, then it may not be in scope of what MessagePack is able to support, and you will still need to use the JSON or the Marshall dumps and Marshall loads. And for the next item, allow queue adapters to provide a custom name. And this one's kind of interesting. For example, if you have fancy queue and you want to have the adapter at the fancy queue active job adapter, the inferred name would be active job before this change. After this change, you can implement the queue adapter name to return the fancy queue. And so I guess the motivation behind this is a bit more freedom to name and organize the code. And next, add support using index for unique constraints in PostgreSQL. And so this is an interesting one because we are now getting this using index option where you can then give it a string when you have a migration. And the benefit of this, if you look at it and how it's used, you can add a unique key to the table users, deferrable immediate using index, and then you can have some unique index name. So if you already have a unique index on that table, then adding the unique key can now happen a lot faster. And for the next item, show reason for foreign key error when loading fixtures. And this is a great one because if you've ever had to deal with flaky tests or tests that work most of the time, but then sometimes they just fail and you get a very obscure error, and if it is related to a foreign key issue, then hopefully this one will give a bit more insight on what foreign key was violated. And for the last item, reduce captures and ActiveSupport Inflector _. And this one's just a small update where the regex was changed, and this is used quite often when you have something like an underscore, then an active model that would return active underscore model, or active model : errors that would return the active underscore model / errors. And so I'm really glad to see someone out there is maintaining the regex because I always get a headache whenever I look at it, and it's just something that I try to avoid. And so over the past week, there were 88 contributors to the Rails framework, and it's really cool to see ChatGPT on here. But again, just make sure you're using caution if you are going to use ChatGPT. And so I just want to thank you everyone who is helping to make Rails just a wonderful framework. There are just so many people this past week in this release, and it's just really awesome to see. Well, that's all for this week's video coverage of This Week in Rails, and if you are going to Rails Conference next week, I hope to see you there. Be sure to come by and stop and say hello to me because I'd like to give you some free swag. It's a lanyard that has the Rails logo and the Drift and Ruby logo, so I'd like to give you one, and also have some stickers, and would just like to say hello. So be sure to flag me down and say hi and ask for one. Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks for watching.